Okay, so that's the complexity of sort of trying to come up with a number that represents the savings that you're claiming for your program. Um, there's also a fairly extensive section within the rulebook that's describing, kind of what I would, characterize as like program management rules. And it's worth kind of taking a little bit of a look through what they've described and how you might go about, thinking about fulfilling some of these. I'm going to be taking a bunch of screenshots from what we've been doing in our platform. Obviously, there's a lot of ways of going about this, and it's meant to be illustrative more than anything else. But it's kind of just to, rather than just having words on the page, to try to give some visuals to go along with it. So one of the big sources of anxiety in making an NMEC, running an NMEC program is what you do with customers that have, what in the industry we call non-routine events. Some outlier event that happens in a building that changes the consumption in a way that distorts the effect of the intervention that you've made. So in my little illustration over here on the right, we have a building that has, a little mom and pop grocery store or something in there, some low level usage, a little bit of a spike at the beginning of the baseline, and then they do the project, and then a month later they put in a data center, and now all of a sudden the usage skyrockets. And if you're the implementer of this program, this project, now you're going bankrupt because this project is swamping the effects of all the other projects that you've done, and your savings claim is completely wiped out. Well, there has to be a way of addressing that, right? And so what the commission said was that, first of all, you have to just spell out in your M&V plan what you're going to do to detect non-routine events. It can be qualitative, or it can be quantitative, such as, we use this CVRMSC value to as a flag for a non-routine event. But you can just say, hey, if we have an occupancy turnover, we want to reserve the right to call it a non-routine event if it materially changes the consumption one way or the other. There's flexibility in there. You just have to lay it out ahead of time so that you're not making subjective ad hoc decisions about what constitutes an NRE and what doesn't. What the commission was really worried about was putting a finger on the scale, where the only NREs that exist are the ones that make your savings look bad, and the ones that make your savings look good, get ignored and included in your savings claims. They want balance on that front. You need a way to record the non-routine events that you do identify, and then a way to report those to the commission as part of your savings claim, and an audit trail so that you can prove your case. The second sort of big programmatic guidance is around eligibility rules and processes. There's the distinction that Carmen made at the beginning between site-based and population, which is obviously a pretty important one. There's some rules around, the kinds of measures that you can that qualify for these programs. Is pretty much what you would expect. But what we're really sort of noticing is that it's not so much eligibility, but ineligibility that kind of represents, what we call the hidden gotcha here. So the question really is not what makes a site eligible, but what makes a site ineligible. And that ineligibility can happen at any point during the program cycle. So they could be ineligible to begin with, and so you don't want to treat them until they become eligible. Or that ineligibility could happen, sometime after you've gone in and done a project in that building. And so what are we thinking about here? We're thinking about incidences where a building or a customer is served by another program. So that might be typically ineligibility prior to a program beginning. The energy use in a building might be wildly inconsistent. And so you'd have a hard time making an NMEC related savings claim for that building, because you just can't tell the difference between, even if that building is part of a population of, you're making a population claim, if the usage is so, wildly, up and down, you're just going to get noise out of it, and so it's not going to help you make your savings claim. If there's occupancy, obviously solar panel installation creates some measurement issues when you're looking at whole building energy consumption, or if there are too many non-routine events in a building, that the usage spikes all of a sudden, intermittently and without explanation. These are all potential disqualifying characteristics of a building. So the question that we need to be asking is, what happens if a site becomes ineligible halfway through the program? If you've made that investment into the project, but all of a sudden now you can't get paid anymore because you can't meter your savings, what do you do? And there are ways of solving for these, but that have been developed, and probably more that will come, as more of these programs get off the ground. But it's something that everybody needs to be thinking about. Current